Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I'm Corey Evan. Coming up on tonight's Evan Miller Report, Boston bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev is guilty on all 30 counts. Guess which state in the union pays the most in property taxes? The answer is in tonight's business report, and it might surprise you, fans of Maury Povich. It's all about our constitutional rights tonight in lawsuits across America. And just what Great Britain needs, a proper dose of Piers Morgan at breakfast time. All those stories and more, plus Jason Miller, what have you got for us?
Thank you very much, Corey. Also on tonight's program, in the UK, Conservatives stuck defending non-DOMs after Labour's announcement that they will get rid of non-DOM policies for good. Also tonight, in Yemen, rebels push into central Aden, and in Greece, Russia's Putin says Greece did not seek financial aid from Russia. And a U.S. soldier killed in an Afghan insider attack. We have the latest from the region. Plus, Brad Dacus joins us tonight to talk about the explosive sex ed discussed in the legislature today. All those stories and more on the Evan Miller Report, your conservative news source, starting right now.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evan with business and entertainment. This is the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Public Press Radio. Here now, Jason Miller.
And a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, on this Wednesday, April the 8th, 2015. I'm Jason Miller. Of course, we have that developing story tonight out of Boston, where for the latest, we're going to go ahead and go up to Corey Evan in our satellite center, and he has the very latest tonight on the Boston Marathon suspect found guilty today on all 30 counts. Corey?
Thank you, Jay. Shortly after he killed 3 people and wounded more than 250 others in the Boston Marathon bombing, surveillance images showed Dzhokhar Tsarnaev strolling through the aisles of Whole Foods to buy milk and smiling as he stopped by his college gym. They were images of someone prosecutors described as a callous killer as they made their case against him. It was a drastically different scene in court on Wednesday. The now Tsarnaev stood with his head bowed and his hands clasped, fidgeting as jurors dealt out a decisive verdict that could be the first step toward sending him to death row. And ITV News has the updates on this story for you.
Breaking news coming out of Boston that Dzhokhar Tsarnaev has been found guilty on all 30 counts.
With the news that the 21-year-old bomber had been found guilty, those he most traumatized, the survivors, emerged from the courthouse to call this a day of justice.
I'm grateful to have him off the street. I'm grateful to show everyone, the world, that it's not tolerated. This is not how we behave, and we're grateful that everybody's worked so hard to make it, known that we're not going to allow this.
The horror of the crime perpetrated by the Tsarnaev brothers was captured by dozens of cameras that day, almost exactly 2 years ago. Oh my God. The transformation of one of America's most celebrated sporting events into a scene of carnage made this one of the most closely watched trials for many years.
Get as many people up here as you can.
The older brother, Tamerlan, was killed in a shootout with police a few days after the bombings. So only Dzhokhar Tsarnaev survived to face justice. Liz Norden's 2 sons were badly injured that day. Both endured amputations. She attended much of the trial, still trying to deal with the overwhelming emotion towards the man in the dock.
It makes you angry. I hate him. I hate the fact that... Sorry. He destroyed my boys' lives. He destroyed my life.
And that anger is still overwhelming for you?
Yeah, it's almost 2 years. Everybody else, life goes on. And you just can't get past that. It just doesn't go away. And it's sad.
Live party in the boat confirmed.
4 days after the bombings, Johar Tsarnaev was spotted with thermal imaging cameras hiding in a boat in a suburban back garden. On the boat's blood-smeared panels, he wrote that the terrorist attack was a response to American wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now found guilty of the most shocking terrorist attack on U.S. soil since 9/11, the jury has a final task remaining, deciding whether he should be executed or put behind bars for the rest of it.
Man, a lot of families are upset over this. Our thanks to Robert Moore of ITV News for the lowdown on today's guilty verdicts. Wow, 30 counts. That's all 30 counts. That is definitely a lot, Jay. And that could mean the death sentence. And what are your thoughts on the odds of the death sentence actually being handed out on this? Pretty high odds now.
Well, Corey, the state of Massachusetts, it's going to be an unusual decision for people in that state. This is done federally, I should note. This isn't being done in the state of Massachusetts. He's being prosecuted federally. So the death penalty is on the table. But according to people that we would hear out of the state, they want him put to death. They don't want him sit in prison.
Sounds like they're indeed having a change of heart about the death penalty now.
This whole terrorist attack on the Boston bombing may change a lot of people's mind about the death penalty, especially after they lose a family member like this. So
a very humbling thing. Sometimes you do need a humbling experience to learn what some laws are there for.
So yeah, it is a sad fact that that it took 2 years for this to get done. Honestly, so
very unfortunate. But there you are, the latest on the Boston Marathon bombing trial. And now I will be awaiting the sentencing details, and I will bring you those as they become available. But for the moment, I'm going to send it to Jason Miller in San Diego. He has more of our international news today. Take it away, Jay.
Thank you very much, Corey. And one note on our previous story on the Boston Marathon suspect, he will be sentenced in the next 2 weeks. That date is yet to be announced, and we will bring that to you. Now off to Yemen tonight, where fresh fighting has been reported in the southern Yemeni city of Aden between Houthi rebels and militiamen loyal to President Abdul Mansur Hadi. Several houses in the Center Crater district were set on fire after being hit by rockets as the rebels advanced. Residents told ITN and the Reuters news agency. Warplanes of the Saudi-led coalition, which backs the government, meanwhile bombarded rebel targets to the north. Iran is also reported to have sent Navy vessels to the Gulf of Aden. Navy Commander Rear Admiral Hoblet Sari was quoted as saying by state-run Press TV that a destroyer and another ship would be deployed off Yemen as part of an anti-piracy campaign safeguarding naval routes for vessels in the region. Tehran has denied Saudi accusations that it provided military and financial assistance to the Houthis, who adhere to a branch of Shia Islam known as Zaydism. The campaign by Saudi-ruled Saudi Arabia, which seeks to defend the legitimate government of Mr. Hadi, has so far failed to stop the Houthis' assault on Aden. Off to Greece now, where Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras did not ask for financial aid from Russia during talks in Moscow with Russia's President Vladimir Putin. There had been speculation that Mr. Tsipras would seek Russian aid to ease Greece's debt crisis and to counter pressure from its creditors in the EU. Mr. Putin said Russia would consider loans to Greece for big joint projects, potentially in the energy sector. But analysts say Russia's own economic woes mean any help would be limited. Greece's new government is embroiled in negotiations with the EU and IMF to unblock a bailout package and could run out of funds within weeks. Greece's president and the Russian president are meeting to further improve ties between the two nations. And there's a lot of stuff you could say about today. Labor probably should have not said abolishing non-dorm status will raise money. How would anyone know, since it depends on the predictive behavior of a small group of unpredictable individuals? the Tories are probably right to say that might knock inward investment and put at least some kind of dent in the economic recovery. What am I talking about, you wonder, ladies and gentlemen? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is people in the UK who pay taxes but are not necessarily UK citizens or have lived in the UK for the longest time but don't have a permanent UK citizenship, but do donate or do business with the UK. Those are called non-doms. As the ITV Tom Bradby reports, the Conservatives got stuck defending the non-doms after Labour's announcement today. Here's Tom's report.
Imagine a world in which you could come to this country, live here a lifetime, drive on the same roads as the rest of us, live in the same cities, but shelter your real wealth somewhere else. And then imagine you could hand that right to your children. Absurd, you say? Nope. Britain today. The upside, investment we mightn't otherwise get, wealth, jobs. The downside, well, who on earth would design a system like that? Not, it seems, the Labour leader.
Why should people be able to enjoy all of the virtues of our great country and not pay tax like everyone else? It isn't fair, it isn't just, it holds Britain back, and we will stop it. The next Labour government will abolish the non-dom rule.
The non-dom system was originally designed back in the 1790s. Non-doms can be British residents born overseas, born here with a foreign father or grandfather, or people who've lived overseas and returned. There are currently around 116,000 in the UK. 5,000 of them have been here for more than 7 years and so pay a charge of between 30,000 and 90,000 a year, bringing in around 300 million for the Treasury. There is, of course, a reason why previous Labour governments and chancellors have not done anything about this. Dealing with the principle without deterring investors and driving people away is not without complication and potential cost, as Ed Balls seemed to acknowledge only a few months ago.
I think if you abolish the whole status, then probably it ends up costing Britain money, because there'll be some people who then leave the country. But I think we can be tougher, and we should be, and we will.
But still, strategically, would you want to be where the Tories are tonight, defending the principle itself?
We've done more than any previous government to crack down on tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance. But today what you see is total chaos and confusion from Labour. 1 minute saying they're going to scrap this status, the next minute saying it would cost the country money. And frankly, this goes to a bigger picture. If these people can't even sort out one policy, how on earth could anyone trust them to run our economy?
The Tories took a decision long ago to fight this election on the economy. There was clear frustration today at what they view as no more than a distraction at best. Well, maybe, but it's clearly today a distraction David Cameron could have done without.
Tom Bradby reporting tonight on the latest on the UK elections. Thanks, Tom. Thank Tom.
Please leave your name and your...
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it seems we're having an issue. We were supposed to have Brad Dacus tonight of the Pacific Justice Institute joining us to talk about the latest in explosive sex ed to be forced into California schools if the current bill introduced by Assemblyman James Gallagher, introduced AB 517, would pass today, and we were expecting to have Brad Dacus join us, but apparently we're having a technical issue with him, getting him tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and take a short break. Hopefully we can get Brad Dacus on the air, but when we come back tonight on the program...
There's one state I won't be flying to on the newly merged American Airlines, and that's the one with the nation's highest property taxes. There's a new lawsuit against the DEA over their phone tapping controversy on the docket. And it looks like Jeremy Clarkson and Piers Morgan are once again hosting shows on the same soil. Do I need my pepper spray? That's all coming up. Plus, Jason Miller, what else you got for us tonight?
All right, thank you very much, Cor. A U.S. soldier has been killed in an Afghan insider attack. We got the latest from the region. Also, a U.S. senator is seeking to remove a key provision from the Iran nuclear bill inside the U.S. Senate tonight. We'll have that latest and hopefully Brad Dacus from the Pacific Justice Institute when we come back on the Evan Miller Report.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Is radio.
Fact news. Fact news.
Radio.
Fact news. Fact news.
Radio.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or follow my blog. Now, back to the Sackheads.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Evan Miller Report here on the SHR Media Networks. I'm Jason Miller along with Corey Evan this evening, and we are pleased to be joined now by the president of the Pacific Justice Institute. Brad Dacus joins us now to talk about the latest on explosive sex education to be forced down our kids' throats here in the state of California. Good evening, Brad.
Oh, it's great to be on the program. Thank you.
Apparently today, over inside the legislature, we have two issues, one which we discussed yesterday, one that had to do with mandatory vaccinations, but the reason we have you here today is for another issue that was also debated today in the legislature. This has to do with sex education. Tell us what happened, and were you on the floor today inside the state legislature, and did it get hot and heavy?
Yeah, here's what happened. Here's what we're talking about. We're talking about a bill that would require written parental consent for any student participate for any sex ed program being put on in any public school where it's being put on by an outside entity or representative or organization like Planned Parenthood. And the reason this is being offered is simply because of what happened in Lafayette. There in Lafayette, California, a high school brought in Planned Parenthood. These two individuals had a horrific background, a disgusting instruction and agenda, and there was total disrespect for even letting parents know about it. So we're properly. So we're that's where this came from, and that's why one of our attorneys testified today before the state legislature in Sacramento, and we're hopeful that in the end that they will do the right thing and respect the rights of parents.
Now, how much harm will this do to our kids? Because the name of this bill, if I have it correctly, this is being introduced by Assemblyman James Gallagher, this bill by the name of AB 517. What would this do to our kids who are in public school right now? Now, I've heard rumors that 14-year-olds might be able to take their pants off. I've also heard other reports that there may now be an adult toy store, and that people can use their imagination on what that might be inside public schools now if this is allowed to pass.
Yeah, well, what we're looking at actually is the status quo, and this is what's so shocking, is the status quo has school districts already doing this. This is what happened in Lafayette, where they had, from Planned Parenthood, two representatives. One of them had a sex toy business, another one a sexual pleasure business, and they go into the school without being identified first ahead of time with parents for them to know about it, and they put on these horrific presentations that are all about things that some things I can't even say on the radio. It's just it's very, 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 very age inappropriate, and it's inappropriate, period.
Well,
and so they put on these.
Brad tried to tell us, I've been doing radio a lot of years. Tried to tell us in the most, and I excuse the term I'm going to use, Brad. I don't mean to be offensive. In the most politically correct way that you possibly could, without
okay, all right,
okay,
let me. Sure. Okay, I'll word it like this, and the audience will probably connect the dots if needed. But the kids had to take a survey, and we're given a survey. These are 14-year-olds in ninth grade, boys and girls. We're given a survey on and whether or not they're ready to engage in intimacy. And so they answer these questions, and if they answer the questions right, then that means they're ready to start engaging in the acts with the opposite gender. And of course, that's very contrary to what most parents would want their 14-year-olds, boys and girls, concluding. And so this kind of instruction.
So much for preventing teen pregnancy. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right. It was just a terrible program, and also they went in to talk about gender identification and all the different kinds of genders you may be. Now, most of us think, well, male, female. Oh no, they have all these complicated new kinds of gender identities. We can be a boy on the outside, girl on the inside. You can be a boy, girl, both, or neither. You can be, tri-gender. You can be. It's just very bizarre, and all the stuff they gave these kids, of course, only adds to the room for further confusion and doubts and insecurities that is so dangerous and so destructive. And so we just called it what it was and identified it for what it was. And it was, and yet here's the sad thing: is the school, in the school district, in this high school, Acalanes High School, did not recant, did not apologize. No, they doubled down, and they went and brought in something called the Queer Straight Alliance group to, I think it's what it's called, QSA, I believe it's what it's called. And they went on into the public schools into the English classrooms with the authority of the principal, and they put on these presentations and then ask the kids to find out what kids were in favor of tolerance or not tolerance, acceptance of homosexual sexual activities, and which ones thought it was morally wrong, and if they decide incorrectly, of course they'd be isolated from their peers and intimidated. And that's what's happened. I mean, that's not for the United States of America. We don't want our schools to become a place for state-sanctioned intimidation of kids who happen to have Christian beliefs or Judeo-Christian perspectives. And that's what what happened. That's what precipitated this legislation, which is there actually to that's being offered, that we testified is actually there to correct school and prevent school districts from doing what happened in Lafayette, that so many liberal public school administrators seem to think is fine and acceptable. And of course, to the parents of California, it's not.
Now we're speaking.
Our founding fathers are not only turning over in their graves; they're wishing that the whole turning themselves into fossil fuels process would speed up.
Yeah,
to put it kindly.
That's one way to put it. We're speaking, ladies and gentlemen, to Brad Dacus. He's the president of Pacific Justice Institute tonight. We're speaking to him about the explosive sex education bill, the AB 517, that Assemblyman James Gallagher is trying to push into California schools. Now, when is this bill expected to be voted on, Brad?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have the details on that. I just know that it's something that people need to be in the very, very near future, if they can contact their state assemblymen, state senators, and let them know their support for legislation that would require written parental consent. Not just notice, but written parental consent before children can be given a sex ed instruction from some outside group, outside the school staff and administration. And that's what's so important, because it's these way out, very damaging, destructive organizations with their own profit margin agendas like Planned Parenthood that so many parents would not trust from day one, and yet they come in and they pull off these kind of shenanigans, if you will, and horrific presentations that are so destructive, so irresponsible. And, in fact, one of the two instructors, I'm going to make it clear, we caught their tweet. They're tweeting how they and the other representatives from Planned Parenthood were going to a porn conference, or a porn convention, pornography convention, and not the kind to stop it, but to quite the opposite. That's what they're made of. That's their agenda, and that's what we want to stop, and by parents being able to have to give written parental consent whenever their child is given a sex ed program by some outside group like this.
So essentially, Brad, and I want to make sure to be clear on this, you're not trying to censor the likes of Planned Parenthood and take them out of the school. All you're trying to say is, hey, we want a balanced thing of both sides, that if there's certain parents who want their kids taught about this, great, they can learn about it, that's fine. But if there's certain parents who don't want their kids taught about this due to religious beliefs or just don't want to be taught about it at all, they should have that option.
Right, exactly, and that's why written parental consent is so basic, and it's something that we shouldn't even have to debate about. And yet, the sad thing is that we know that the Republicans will support the legislation to require parental consent. The Democrats, who have a huge, definite, strong majority in both the Assembly and the State Senate, we're not sure there's enough Democrats, sadly enough, that can be pulled away from their core radical agenda to support something that's parent-friendly and respectful of the rights and wishes of parents in California. We're hopeful that there will be, but we just don't know at this point. And it would be a sad day that that something like this, so basic like this, would not be passed because of the strength of of some radical social groups like the LGBT and others.
Absolutely. Well, keep us up to date on that. Now, do you have a little bit more time with us, Brad? Because I have one more story I want to cover with you before we let you go today.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, I want to talk about this Sodomite Suppression Act. This has made headlines across the nation for the past 2 weeks. This is being proposed by a Huntington Beach attorney. It's called the Sodomite Suppression Act. And of course, here in California, this bill has zero chance of ever becoming law, but it is giving us conservatives, Brad, a very bad name. Why don't you talk to our audience who is outside of California a little bit more about it and explain what this bill is first of all, and then explain how it makes us look bad as conservatives, if you would.
Yeah, what it does, the gentleman who authored this, I don't know, I've never met him. I don't know what's going on in his thinking, but it's a sad piece of a proposed initiative I think on the ballot. Basically what it says is that if someone is caught committing homosexual acts, then they can be shot in the head and executed for doing so. I mean, it's so way out. It's so contrary to the Christian worldview, which is, that Christ didn't come to kill, but to save. And so this is just very, very draconian. It's something way out. I don't think he's going to get 100 signatures in California, much less the 300,000 that would be needed to put this on the ballot. I really don't. It's a very, it's just a very bad piece of legislation. And the sad thing is the extreme groups that are so zealously promoting these lifestyles, homosexuality, transgenderism, and things like that, are going to be using this in a way to stereotype people who have moral and religious convictions and policy convictions against that lifestyle of homosexuality.
And you know what? When I was young, I had the very strict opinion. I was brought up in a Christian household, Brad. I was under the very strict opinion, and this is, of course, came from my parents, that homosexuals were bad. You don't want to hang out with the likes of them. I developed, of course, in my opinion, matured in my opinion per se, and it's like, okay, I respect homosexuals for their rights to do what they want to do, just as long as they don't their rights force their rights onto us and their lifestyle onto us, and in which it affects my family. I have no problem with that. And unfortunately, we have people like this Huntington Beach attorney who wants to act like the people over in Russia do, because the people in Russia feel the exact same way that he does, at least the government does. If you even spout that you're a homosexual or pass homosexual material out in Russia, guess what? You're either shot on the spot or you're put inside a jail cell. And I don't think we should be doing things like that here in the United States.
Well, you're right. You're absolutely right. And we in the United States are we're very civilized. We may not agree with each other, but we hopefully would allow each other to express our opinions, our viewpoints, our attitudes, without being completely, silencing one group or the other. And this kind of legislation, this proposed initiative is just horrific. Something I don't think most Americans would vote for or support. That's for sure.
Okay, Brad, before we let you go, is there anything else you like to bring up to folks here that nationally that's going on here in the state of California that they need to know about? What your organization is doing, because you're not only covering the issue right now of this education in the Capitol. There's this transgender bathroom bill that is going on. There's so much going on here in the state of California that people don't even know about.
Right. Well, I can say one thing I encourage is for people to go to our website, and if they have their children in public schools and they want information about their rights and lay claim to their rights, we have opt-out forms that really empower parents to be able to lay claim to the rights that they have to protect their children, and all kinds of things from sex education to Common Core testing and invasion of privacy. And they can get all that information from our website, which is pacificjustice.org, pacificjustice.org, pacificjustice.org. And they also can sign up to get our weekly Legal Insider. It's emailed, it's short, very interesting, and thousands receive that. I encourage people to take advantage of that as well. It's at our website, pacificjustice.org, pacificjustice.org.
All right, Brad. And I don't know, I haven't got the official schedule for the Eagle Forum Conference. Have you been invited back this year?
That is my understanding, and I'm looking forward to participating.
Well,
it'll be good to see you again, sir.
Yes, absolutely. I enjoyed your speaking last year, and of course we interviewed you last year, and hopefully you could stop by our broadcast booth this time around. We'd love to interview you again. What topics are you going to be talking about when you come to the conference this year? If you can give a little teaser without giving too much away.
We're going to be talking about an update on the challenges to parents' rights that we have not seen until just very recently, that are so shocking and so serious, and then also empowerment, specific things that parents can do to empower themselves, protect themselves, and their children, their families. And so it's not just this is how terrible everything is. It's also very constructive and empowering parents to take clear actions to protect their families.
Well, it should be very informative indeed, and coming on May the 2nd, if you live in the California area, come down to Costa Mesa to the Calvary Chapel. More details in the next week or so from Orlene Kurla, our SHR media contributor and global affairs correspondent as well. She will have more details on it, but the SHR Media is your home of the California Eagle Forum Conference on May the 2nd. Our coverage starts at 12 Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Thank you so much, Brad, for joining us, and come back on again soon if you have an update on that bill that has to do with sex ed.
Great. Thank you. My pleasure. God bless. Thanks. Bye-bye.
God bless
Bye-bye.
you too. Bye-bye. All right, folks, I'm Jason Miller. You've been listening to Brad Dacus from the Pacific Justice Institute on the Evan Miller Report. And when we come back, Corey Evan will have a look at some of the day's other headlines.
As well as smashing Mr. Gallagher's honeydew melons, if you will.
Yes, well, while Corey goes up and handles those honeydew melons up in our state capital here in Sacramento, we have to take a break, and we'll be right back.
In a moment, cancer changed our lives forever.
We were told nothing could be done to enjoy these final moments together.
But in that moment, when all seemed lost,
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital gave us hope.
Because at this moment, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is saving lives with pioneering research and care. We're changing the way the world treats childhood cancer by sharing our discoveries with doctors and scientists everywhere.
And we'll never have to pay St. Jude for anything, ever.
At this moment, she wants to be in her own bed.
I want to be back at school with my friends.
I want to be outside playing.
Please take a moment and join St. Jude in finding cures and saving children. Visit stjude.org.
Okay, run.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Evan Miller Report. I'm Jason Miller. Now a look at some other international news stories that, in brief, that we couldn't bring you earlier due to timing issues. A U.S. soldier has been killed in the eastern Afghan city of Jalalabad, reportedly after being fired upon by an Afghan soldier in an insider attack. The Afghan soldier was also killed when the U.S. troops returned fire. The shooting erupted as a U.S. diplomat was leaving a meeting with the provincial governor. Insider attacks on NATO troops by Afghan security forces have grown more frequent in the final years of NATO's combat mission in the region, which was supposed to wind down in 2014. The attacks, also known as green on blue, damaged trust between NATO forces and Afghans who have been trained by them. A Democratic U.S. Senator on Wednesday offered an amendment to an Iran nuclear bill that would remove the measures tied to Iranian-sponsored terrorism, a change that could attract more support for the legislation from his party. Despite President Obama's threat to veto the bill due to concerns it would undermine final talks with Iran, many Democrats are lining up with Republicans to pass the legislation, giving Congress a say in any final pact. Senator Chris Coons plans to have his amendment called up for debate next Tuesday when the Senate Foreign Relations Committee is set to work on bipartisan legislation.
I'm Corey Evan with the rest of the day's other news around the nation. Robert Durst was indicted today on gun charges in Louisiana, likely delaying his extradition to California to face murder charges, according to court officials, as reported by the LA Times. Durst, the focus of the HBO documentary The Jinx, was indicted on charges of possessing a firearm while carrying marijuana and possession of a firearm by a felon, court officials confirmed. Investigators said they found a .38 caliber revolver and marijuana in his hotel room. The indictment raised immediate questions about efforts to extradite Durst to California to face charges in a nearly 15-year-old murder case. Durst's lead attorney, Houston-based litigator Dick DeGuerin, told the Times he learned of the grand jury indictment from news reports. An extradition hearing is scheduled Thursday before Orleans Court Magistrate Harry Cantrell Jr., and DeGuerin says he intends to push for his client to be extradited to California despite the indictment. He said the state charges are coincidental to the case in California. Durst was arrested March 14th in New Orleans after being stopped by FBI agents at his French Quarter Hotel on a California murder warrant. He has waived extradition to California, where he's wanted in connection with the murder of friend and author Susan Berman, who was shot in the head at her Benedict Canyon home about 15 years ago. Durst briefly appeared in court Tuesday, but Cantrell continued the issue to Thursday, according to his lead attorney and court staff. If convicted in New Orleans as a first-time offender, Durst could face sentences of up to 20 years on each of the charges: possession of a firearm by a convicted felon and possession of a firearm with a controlled substance. Officials have 30 days to enforce Durst's extradition, which would expire next week, according to his legal team staff. A 36-year-old father of 7 has perished together with his kids in what police believe to be generator gas poisoning in their home in Princess Anne, Maryland. The power utility was cut off by regulators, and Rodney Todd had installed a power generator in his kitchen, probably to keep his children warm in the chilly weather, but police had found them all 8 dead on Monday in what could be carbon monoxide poisoning. The Princess Anne Police Department subpoenaed the Maryland Public Utility Regulator to determine why power was cut from Todd's home, and the power company replied they did not cut power to the deceased's home because of non-payment, even though they had written to residents who are having problems paying for utility to contact the company for assistance. The utility said they found a stolen meter in Todd's house and cut off electricity to protect them, and according to the Delmarva Power Company, it cut off power from the rental home on March 25th. Todd, his 2 sons, and 5 daughters were last seen alive on March 28th. Their bodies were found in their 1-story wood frame house after Todd's co-workers, friends, and his children's school teachers called on the police after they failed to answer their door. And we'll go ahead and go into business news right about... Where's that bell? There we are. The Dow was up 27 points at 17,902. The Nasdaq up 40 points at 49.50, and S&P 500 was up 5 points at 2081. Another lackluster day, but at least it's high numbers instead of lower numbers. According to a new report, property and motor vehicles owners in Connecticut ranked in the top 10 in 2 key tax categories, according to the Benchmark Reporter. According to the report, an average resident in Connecticut property tax bill. The average American household spends about $2,000 on property taxes annually. The report also reveals that the car tax bill in Connecticut is more than $600. Researchers of the study said both are dependent on local mill rates in the city or town in which the tax is being assessed. They said the only other city which is ranked in top The only other state which is ranked in the top 10 for both categories is Rhode Island. After the report made public, the Republican state senator from Watertown, Rob Kane, said such high taxes meant that Connecticut has more state services than it should. The report also revealed that the tenants are even bill, given that the taxes are incorporated into their monthly rents. According to the researchers, homebuyers should look into property taxes before they commit to buy a property in particular cities. In a recent report, the National Consumer Law Center said around $15 billion worth of homes are foreclosed every year because of property tax law. Which makes me wonder why the likes of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and The Maury Povich Show would bother setting up shop in Connecticut. I mean, if you're paying that high of property taxes there in both categories, why do it? Anyway, global equity markets. Yeah. Anyway, global equity markets rose on Wednesday, and European shares hit 8-year highs on a $70 billion takeover bid by Royal Dutch Shell, while U.S. shares pared gains after the largest U.S. crude inventory build in 14 years slammed oil prices. U.S. Energy Information Administration data showed stockpiles of U.S. crude surged nearly 11 million barrels last week in their largest weekly build since March 2001. The dollar rebounded after the Fed released minutes of its March policy meeting. The Fed opened the door for a June rate hike, even though some policymakers were willing to wait until next year. And they may have to. Trade in Wall Street stocks was volatile after the recent release of the minutes, though stocks steadied and remained higher after the initial dip in the Dow. Shell's bid for energy firm BG Group, the first major merger in the sector in more than a decade, boosted European shares. Energy shares, which had tumbled on the plunge in oil and gas prices since last summer, rallied as the deal drove expectations that the sector could see further consolidation. The stock's energy sector index in Europe rose as much as 6.1% before closing up 2.45%. The pan-European FTSE Euro First 300 index finished down 0.04%, hurt by a fall in Germany's DAX as auto stocks fell and a decline in Greek equities ahead of a deadline for Greece to repay a loan. And American Airlines cleared one of its most significant milestones yet today as it pushes ahead on its merger with U.S. Airways. The FAA granted the carriers a single operating certificate that recognizes them as a single airline. The impact to passengers is minimal, but the move is a key step in integration with U.S. Airways and begin flying under a single brand. Eventually, the U.S. Airways name will fade away, with the combined carrier operating simply as American and flying American-branded airplanes. American's attainment of the SOC, quote, really isn't noticeable from a customer perspective, but it's quite significant internally, according to Bob Mann, an aviation consultant and former American executive, to Bloomberg News. So how about that, Jay? After all this time, they're finally getting rid of the U.S. Airways name. It's going to be sort of bittersweet for those who have flown U.S. Airways for the longest time.
Well, let's just say I'm not crying any big gripes about it.
Right, because we're Southwest customers when we fly.
Yeah,
when
we fly.
Yeah,
not to say
yeah.
We're
Call us up,
on
Southwest.
This program, but my last experience on U.S. Airways, not exactly a pleasant one. Plane was a bit, let's just say, uncleanly, as to say.
Good riddance to bad rubbish.
Absolutely, to quote the Looney Tunes thing right there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's Corey Evan. He has the business news. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for tonight's Lawsuits Across America.
And now it's time for Lawsuits Across America. The cases are real. All rise for the Honorable Corey Evans.
Yeah. Sit, people. I want to get to this first one right away. The Justice Department violated the Constitution by secretly gathering logs of billions of calls from the United States to as many as 116 countries, according to Human Rights Watch's
Is it now time for a Russian pot roast?
Oh, yes. I can't wait to sink my teeth into this one. The lawsuit filed in federal court in L.A. asks the judge to declare that the now halted surveillance operation was illegal and to permanently block the government from restarting it. The Justice Department acknowledged in January that the Drug Enforcement Administration had been secretly gathering logs of Americans' international phone calls. There we are. USA Today reported on Tuesday that the program began nearly a decade before the 9/11 terrorist attacks, and provided a blueprint for the far broader National Security Agency surveillance program that followed. It included virtually all calls from the U.S. to Mexico, Canada, and most of the countries in South and Central America. The suit is the latest legal challenge to government data gathering that EFF and other privacy advocates argue are unconstitutional. The group is also pressing a lawsuit challenging the NSA surveillance program, which includes records of Americans' domestic phone calls. In short, this is going to get hairy. Yes. And a second class action lawsuit for back pay was filed Wednesday by DC home health care workers against 4 agencies in what attorneys have said could potentially grow into a $150 million challenge to the industry, according to BizJournals.com. Home health agencies Capital View Home Health, Human Touch Home Healthcare Agency, TNN Reliable Nursing Care, and VMT Health Agency were named in the latest suit in DC Superior Court. At least 130 workers are seeking pay going back 3 years. Calls for comment to each of the agencies were not immediately returned today. An initial lawsuit filed in December included about 150 home health workers who filed complaints against 3 other home health agencies. Attorneys believe as many as 6,000 workers could become plaintiffs in the class action suit, raising total damages to a potential $150 million. According to the suit, the workers claimed they were forced to work without being paid following an FBI sting last year that uncovered $78 million in fraudulent Medicaid billing and rocked the local home health industry. $78 million in fraudulent Medicaid. Now we understand how bad the Obamacare program is if it's paying out to things like this. We don't want it. Get rid of it. Throw it in the garbage. In fact, throw its author in a dumpster. And on that note, I think we better declare today's lawsuits across America case dismissed.
Corey Evan with tonight's lawsuits across America. All right, folks, it's now time for the entertainment news. And Piers Morgan is at it again, isn't he? Except
he certainly is.
In the U.S., he's re-affecting the U.K. And he's doing
yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, he's definitely going to upset quite a few Britons, but at any rate, the opinionated, and it says slightly controversial, but I say very controversial, journalist and TV chat show host Piers Morgan will be joining Susanna as a Good Morning Britain presenter for 1 week only from next Monday. Check it out.
Piers Morgan. Handsome, reticent, unopinionated, somebody who would be perhaps almost painfully shy when in the presence of a strong-willed, intelligent woman with long dark hair. I'm joining Susanna as host of Good Morning Britain for 1 week only, starting Monday on ITV.
I never thought I'd hear the day that Piers Morgan would be on the likes of Good Morning Britain, Corey Evan. So, you know what? For 1 week and 1 week only, since he's going to be on that program, I'm hereby renaming the show with my executive power of a journalist to Good Morning Bumpster with Piers
Yes! Morgan. Good thing it's only 1 week, but it's probably going to be their lowest rated week, knowing him and his bad ratings. But at any rate, I've also got news for you. The Kardashians have bad ratings when it comes to getting around Hollywood. Get this. Several signs that read, "No Kardashian parking anytime," have been erected in popular locations across LA. Yes, indeed. The 7 signs were nailed onto street poles along with other official parking signs, one of them even outside the Kardashians' Dash boutique. And while they look like the real deal, of course they're completely fake. They're the latest work from street artist Plastic Jesus. No, seriously, folks, that's his name. I've got the copy right here. He says he got the idea recently when traffic came to a standstill because paparazzi were waiting for a Kardashian sister. And even though the signs are a definite act of vandalism, according to some, the LAPD told The Hollywood Reporter that no complaints had been filed. And believe it or not, this first appeared on news.com.au, at least according to this, and Fox News got their hands on it, so great find, Fox News. You've outdone yourselves this time. And Jeremy Clarkson is set to make his first appearance on the BBC since losing his job as co-presenter of Top Gear. The controversial host will appear as the guest host of Have I Got News for You on April 24th.
Oh,
Clarkson
got a story to tell, isn't that right?
Yes, and Jay, have you ever seen Have I Got News for You?
I have seen it once or twice.
Well, I have a feeling he's going to watch this one, and you better, Jay, because anytime Jeremy Clarkson is on, it's a rip snorting good time. Clarkson hosted the
subscription already.
Good. Clarkson has hosted the satirical news quiz on numerous occasions, but during one appearance in 2008, he threw a pen at regular panelist Ian Hislop that left the latter with a cut on his face, so who knows what will happen this time. Of course, you know that Clarkson was suspended by the BBC and then later terminated following his fracas with Top Gear producer Oisin Timon in a hotel in North Yorkshire in England. Then 1 million people signed a petition to reinstate him, but the BBC Director General Tony Hall said a line has been crossed and there cannot be one rule for one and one rule for another. So, of course, the fans have done this one, and even though they're still... and who's going to be hosting? Not going to be Clarkson, but Richard Hammond and James May have not yet indicated whether they will be returning to the program. I wouldn't be surprised if they left. But that is your entertainment report for today. Hope to entertain you again tomorrow. Till then, I'm Corey Evans and Jason Miller.
Thank you very much, Corey. Corey Evans with the entertainment news. And ladies and gentlemen, a reminder of our top story. Tarnaizov in Boston has been convicted on all 30 counts with the Boston Marathon bombing 2 years ago. Stay with the Evan Miller Report for the latest on this developing story as the sentencing continues in about 2 weeks' time. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, that is the Evan Miller Report for this Wednesday, April the 8th, 2015. I'm Jason Miller.
And I'm Corey Evan. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You'll be glad you did. For all of us here at SHR Media, we thank you for listening. Coming up is the weather from the Met Office, and the Exceptional Conservative Show will be that.
And after that is the Sackheads Radio Show. Sackhead
oh, goody!
Sackhead Sean, Sackhead Clint, and free that Sacco, ladies and gentlemen. It's Sackheads Radio Night. It's Wednesday night. All right, here's the weather with the BBC Met Office's Thomas Schaffnacker. Talk about a name there, ladies and gentlemen. He has your weather tonight. Good night, everybody.
Hello, thanks for tuning in. Let's get you up to date now with North America's weather forecast. And, of course, this time of the year we see spring storms developing across the plains, and this is indeed the forecast for Thursday. We've already had some nasty weather across parts of the U.S. during Wednesday, and the potential for further nasty storms, including tornadoes, particularly through Tornado Alley, which is around about here. That threat continues for the rest of the week. To the north of that, northern plains around the upper Midwest, cloudy with some heavy outbreaks of rain. Let's have a look at this forecast in a little bit more detail. First of all, across the eastern seaboard, then, so you can see all of that rain. In fact, on the border with Canada, some of that heavy rain drifting into Toronto as well, affecting Chicago. To the south of that, it's these areas here that are likely to catch those big, powerful thunderstorms with large hail, gusty winds as well. In Miami, however, it's looking a little bit better. Fine as well for Vancouver, although a little on the fresh side, 15 degrees, and lots of dry weather, as you'd expect if you live in California, for example. You know too well that it is a drought, quite a significant drought here. More sunshine to come for Thursday. Now, let's have a look at the outlook for Friday and Saturday in Miami. Typical weather, 27 degrees with a few showers. Atlanta around 79 Fahrenheit there, with also 1 or 2 showers. Meanwhile, Los Angeles stays set fair with some sunshine. In Portland, a few showers heading your way there. That's it. Bye.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.